Today on CityLine, the road to safe and equitable streets, how transportation advocates are fighting for you, whether you walk, bike, ride, or drive. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jessica Brown. Boston cycling community is trying to turn tragedy into change. On July 9th, Louisa Gag was struck and killed while riding her bike in Boston. She was a transportation planner for the city of Boston and a longtime street safety advocate. Her death renewed calls for the city to take action to ensure cyclist safety and after what advocates call a preventable death. Joining us now is Tiffany Cogell, Interim Executive Director of the Boston Cyclists Union. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start by extending our condolences. First thing, it's really a tremendous loss, especially for the union, but for the city.
Yes, for sure. There isn't really much that you can think of or speak of around safe streets and bike joy that Louisa Gag didn't have her efforts in or touch in some way.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about Boston Cyclists Union. How do you work to bring safer streets to the city?
So our mission is to ensure equitable, people-centered spaces and safe streets for everybody. And so our mission drives our advocacy towards safe streets, and that means raising awareness for the right for everyone, including people who cycle, to have an expectancy of safety, and that should be the reality for everyone, regardless of the mode of transportation that they use. We are the Boston Cyclists Union, and so we focus our efforts on making sure that cyclists have safe connectivity to be able to get around the city, whether it's a bike lane or some kind of bike facility, micromobility lane, to make sure that there's separation between where cars are driving and cyclists are riding.
I know there's a concept used in your work that, some may not be familiar with. It's called mobility justice. Walk us through what that means. Yeah.
And so it's really about equity. And we use that term because we want to make sure that we are being inclusive of all micro-mobility modes of transportation. So whether you roll, whether you walk, whether you ride a bike, we have a right to be safe regardless of the mode of transportation that we use. That is mobility justice. And it is up to our elected officials and lawmakers to make sure that there is infrastructure to be able to hold all of us safely, regardless of how we choose to get around the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the creation of bike lanes and use of the roads is often posed as an us versus them or zero sum. People pit cars and bikes against each other, it feels like, right? But that's not what you are advocating for.
No, and again, we go back to mobility justice. There's a foundational equity component, and mobility justice means that everyone, regardless of how they choose to get around, that there's infrastructure to keep them safe. And so that means that regardless of, again, whether you're walking or biking or scootering, that the city should have infrastructure in place to make sure that regardless of what that mode of transportation you choose is that we know, you know what? When I go across the street, I can connect to that next bike lane. I know that I'm going to be protected and separated from motor vehicles. And so that's the mobility justice part. That's the equity part. So it's really not about an us or them. It's how do we all share open space together. There's one thing, right, that we're not making more of, and that's land and street. And so open spaces are supposed to accommodate our most vulnerable users. And on the road, the most vulnerable users are people that are moving around outside of cars. And so we advocate to make sure that, first of all, that there's awareness, and second of all, that we are working with, in good faith, and also in some cases holding accountable our elected officials for making sure that these spaces are open and safe for everyone.
And speaking of city leaders, I know, some city leaders have taken action after Louisa's death. Mayor Michelle Wu released a street safety plan. It includes measures like using more concrete barriers, cracking down on vehicles, blocking bike lanes, and working to tighten rules for trucks operating in the city. We know the City Council also unanimously passed an ordinance to recommit the city to Vision Zero 2030, which is an initiative focused on eliminating deadly traffic crashes. So in your view, is all of this enough?
If we think about Vision Zero, so the zero is in there because we want to get to zero fatalities at the result of crashes, right? Vehicular loss of life. Vision Zero in its totality, Louisa Gag did a lot of work to foundationalize what safe streets should look like with the wording and the work that went into Vision Zero. And so in totality, between Vision Zero and Go Boston 2030, which is also an effort and a manual, if you will, a pathway forward for us to, as a city, institute safe streets as a norm. If all of these mandates were normalized and implemented, yes, that would be what safe streets could look like. And both of these different documents, these manuals, these pathways were customized to the city of Boston and how we move and the culture of Boston. And so, yes, that would institute safe streets if everything was implemented.
Okay. I know not all cycling is about essential transportation, work, school. There's just the fun of it, right? The joy of it. BCU advocates for bike joy.
Yes.
What is that, and what are some of the activities you promote?
So bike joy is essentially the joy that you would get from riding a bike. And as we know, moving our bodies is healthy, and not just a physical manifestation of health, but also a mental well-being manifestation of health as well, and taking up space. Right? And being out in the open. And think about when you are walking or when you're riding a bike, all of the things that you get to experience and see. We experience our neighborhood and our community and our neighbors differently than we would if we were in a car.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tiffany, we appreciate you being here and the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks.
Well, coming up, connecting people to transportation, no matter where you live, how a Massachusetts coalition is prioritizing access and affordability.